Issue 239. We start out with some narration asking us if Sonic has a darker side to him. No duh. We see a panel saying, Kane Broadcasting Corporation presents Sonic the Inside Story. Is this what I think it is? I mean, I heard about something like this, but I didn't think it would happen so soon. We see narration continue to try to turn us against the Freedom Fighters by calling Sonic's control center an opposing power. Obvious bias there, which should immediately cause everybody to be skeptical. The imposing tower has access to spy satellites and sensor readings from all across the globe, letting Sonic keep tabs on the entire planet. That would be creepy if they weren't all heroes. The audience is reminded that the control tower is run by the Kintobor computer, when Kintobor went on to become Eggman. I mean, that's a good point they're raising. Like, honestly, people would have a lot more reason to be afraid of and distrust Kintobor than they would Nicole under Flynn. Kintobor was literally Eggman once. We see an interview with Porker from the person making this inside story about what safeguards there are to ensure privacy. Porker says there's sensors in every zone so they can pick up info from across the planet instantly. And the narration says that's not the answer they wanted to hear. I'm pretty sure if they asked Porker safeguards to ensure privacy, he would talk about something relevant to that instead of just talking as if all they did was ask about the sensors in the first place. I think his response would have been, what? Well, there aren't any. We never really thought of that. And that would have been more helpful for the campaign than simply videotaping him saying that there are sensors. A psychologist is shown to say that Sonic was a military leader under Eggman's rule. Well, he did lead a group of child soldiers. That's technically true. He says that he's too used to commanding to sit back now, and needs to be in control. Well, even Archie Sonic showed signs of finding peace boring like Scourge. After Robotnik was taken down, he was really bored of being at a council and having no villain to fight as a big hero. And even Fleetway's Sonic, right after Robotnik was taken down, we cut to days later where Sonic was going around a village saying bored multiple times. He needs to have minor villains showing up, because otherwise he'd have nothing exciting to do that would be socially acceptable. I mean, it's not like Sonic is involved in any sports, and he would be cheating if he was, because he has super speed. I can understand having some sort of concern with Sonic getting bored because there's no major villain to fight. But Eggman hasn't been the leader of the whole world in a long time now, and Sonic's been fine and content fighting other villains as well as dealing with him. And the idea that he'd take over the world is laughable. He even said no when people wanted him to do it at one point. He said, thanks, but I'm not cut out for a desk job. Then we see the noted businessmen, the Marxio brothers, who experienced Sonic's controlling attitude early on. Why are these guys still on Mobius? One of them had said that they were going back to their own world, but apparently they haven't yet. Even though portals show up all the time and there's the Ring of Eternity around, why should they stay here? They have a reputation as villains here. It's not their home world. Plus, the entire general public should know that these guys were villains who tried to kill Sonic under Eggman, so why side with them? The Marxio brother, who apparently is still in charge of Chemical Plant Zone after it almost blew up on his watch, says that Sonic came in and smashed its place up, saying he wanted them off the planet. They're villains. Why wouldn't he? Though that does make him sound like a thug. But that could be a lie, for all we know. It could go either way with that. Then we see video footage of Sonic going after some kids whose only crime was playing baseball, saying that this is some kind of trap. A text box says that you can see issue 143 for the full story, explaining why the scene feels familiar. When this happened, it was right before Kintobor was taken over by Grimer briefly and tried to attack Sonic. And Sonic didn't ever attack the kids after this point, so really the scene is just being shown completely out of context. We're not shown what happened right after it. And of course we have clever editing, because we don't see him relax from the kids afterwards. But since the narration is expecting the audience to believe Sonic attacked the children when it's clearly not showing footage of that happening, It's a stretch to say the least. And you'd think everybody would be suspicious because this is a video entirely dedicated to smearing Sonic. You'd think that if he actually did that, then a video that's about showing Sonic at his worst would have shown him doing it. So the fact that there's no footage of it proves he didn't do it. Then we get to the part of the video that I fully agree with. Here, it makes perfect sense that people will be angry at Sonic. The video footage says that even Sonic's friends are fair game for his bullying. Sonic says to Tails, "Shut up, Pixel Brain, I'm trying to save the world. I don't have time for your nonsense today, Pixel Brain." It would have felt more cathartic and satisfying if we saw him quote lines that he actually said to Tails in the comic, instead of completely brand new ones that are all in character for him, dismissing Tails. I mean, he said some pretty horrible things as canon. He even pretended he was dead at one point just to screw with him. You'd think we'd be shown those images and it'd create a much greater impact than showing us something brand new made up for the comic. There were a few times in these reviews where I mentioned that if they showed this would ruin his reputation. But the smear campaign doesn't take advantage of those potential times. Then we see Tails being interviewed. He says that he's not scared of Sonic, and he gets annoyed denying it again, delusionally saying that Sonic doesn't mean any harm by the way he treats him. Yeah, right. The interviewer really sucks at his job, because he shouldn't have said, "Are you scared of Sonic?" Because of course he's gonna say he isn't. What he should have said was, "Does Sonic ever hurt your feelings? Like, how does he make you feel when he calls you worthless and stuff?" Like, that's what he should have said. But no. I mean, he would have pretended that he was fine with that too, but it would have... That was a really stupid question of him to ask him. It just made the smear campaign look bad. In another instance of things being skewed against Sonic, the psychologist says that it's typical for a control freak personality to seek to surround himself with passive, ineffectual characters, so that he can exert his authority over them without fear of being challenged. Holy crap, he made a good point! Usually I'd only think of Sally as remotely in the slightest a control freak, not Sonic, because you saw under Bullers at one point that she was pretty sad about the fact that she wasn't really the leader anymore, that it was Elias and the king who was in charge, not her. Like at one point she said, what will you do, Elias? I mean, control freak, it sounds like she's negative. It's not necessarily that, but yeah, like this is a very good point. Like Sonic is the leader in this particular comic because there's no Sally around. And his friends are accused of being too weak-willed to tell that they're being manipulated. I mean, while we do see them tell him off occasionally when he says rude things, like when he called Porker too soft, they only do it in like one line. And that's not even getting into the fact that in the earlier issues of the comic, the art was so inexpressive that the characters telling Sonic off merely looked surprised at him and never annoyed or upset, like they should be. We see Porker being asked if he's weak-willed and easily manipulated, and he says he doesn't know what to say. And eventually he starts to cry, with the narration telling us that he's crying because of Sonic's bullying nature. I doubt he actually discussed that, because come on, if the video did have footage of him talking about that, you'd think it would have shown every word of it. He cried, but not from talking about that. More like he did because of the previous panel where he was insulted and he's too hard on himself. You'd think that the people watching this would be really suspicious because the supposed him crying from his bullying nature, none of the conversation involving that was shown. The narration asks who's Sonic's real friends, and here the video isn't as good as it was before because it really had me there with Sonic being rude to his friends, and I have a legitimate point. I mean, I don't hate Fleetway Sonic. The story is showing me what I love about this character because of how fascinatingly evil he is for a hero. He's a hero, but he's the closest to a villain that a heroic Sonic has ever been. Now that fascinates me to no end because an anti-hero with an attitude would realistically be this way, even to his own friends. He's like a deconstruction of the personality of the typical classic Sonic who has the attitude. He's like a deconstruction of that. I doubt that a video like this could be made nearly as convincingly about any other version of Sonic than this one. Anyways, the video goes on to try to portray Sonic's enemies as his real friends, like Captain Plunder. Oh, I was about to type Captain Whisker there. He says that Sonic's helped him out on many of his finest heists. Yeah, against Eggman. You'd think he would have mentioned that. Maybe he did and the video cut it out. Also, as far as we know, he only helped him out on one of them, but I guess he did multiple heists and we're just not shown any of them. Then some narration puts into question Sonic's reliability and effectiveness. Even though he was very much a hero throughout the entire comic, stopped a lot of villains. But they're gonna have a good point here. SVO was interviewed as calling Sonic useless because he was there when the Special Zone was destroyed. And he says, yeah, he was pretty useless. I mean, billions of people died. That's a pretty big deal. A pretty big failure on Sonic's part. And at not one point does Sonic ever shown to have felt bad about it. Like, later on, Knuckles is going to feel guilty about it. But we don't see Sonic, like, feeling bad about it. And, like, I'm pretty sure that if any other Sonic had an entire zone full of people destroyed on his watch, he would be completely a wreck. Then Vector is asked if he'll use his time travel machine to alter history and bring the Special Zone back. Vector refuses to because he thinks tampering with history can have some pretty bad consequences. Worse than an entire zone of people being destroyed? That's pretty forced. It's like, clearly the writer really doesn't want to bring the Special Zone back. Do you think that this would hurt Vector's reputation, not Sonic's? Anyways, this is the point where the interviewer gets out of the chaotics, the revelation that Sonic created Eggman as we know him in the first place. I can only give the issue the benefit of the doubt and assume that Mighty went on to explain why Sonic did that after saying he had his reasons. But even then, he shouldn't have just said he had his reasons in the first place. He should have immediately said that he did it to get the Metalics their self-destruct device. Then the narration goes into a conspiracy theory over whether Sonic's resistance movement was all a cover for a secret, mutually profitable partnership with Eggman. You know, I would have felt more satisfied seeing more panels of Sonic bullying Tails and showing us Tails crying from it because of all the spy cameras are everywhere, so they would have been able to show us footage of that. It would have been much more satisfying to have more focus on Sonic bullying Tails than seeing this made-up bullshit. Because this is the part where the video just has no legitimate point whatsoever. And when it has no legitimate point, it's just frustrating. At least with the Sonic mistreats his friends thing, I can get catharsis out of the fact that he's getting karma for the way he treated Tails, because he's being exposed for that. But the rest of this seems to be just completely misleading based on either cherry-picking evidence or just complete conspiracy theories. A conspiracy theorist professor at Metropolis University agrees with the conspiracy theory against Sonic, saying that maybe Sonic deposed Eggman to claim all of their amassed wealth while Eggman was sent packing. And then he says that Eggman might just be the victim here. The minute he uttered that line, you'd think that the vast majority of the audience seeing this would realize right away, if they didn't already, this is Eggman fanboy propaganda. Because in a world that used to be completely terrorized by Eggman, you'd think saying Eggman was the victim would be the equivalent of defending freaking Hitler. That's not hyperbole when you consider just how terrible Eggman was. He enslaved all of Mobius. He literally forced his civilians to sit down and watch an hour-long TV show every 6 o'clock telling them to obey him. Forget putting people in badniks. This I can easily imagine and relate to as something a dictator would do. That feels more real and immediately horrifying. The very idea that anyone would defend Eggman and not be immediately hated as the equivalent of a neo-Nazi in the Sonic universe is just ridiculous. Because the Eggman fanboys, or Drat, don't exactly have a good reputation. The rest of the video is pretty convincing, but this line right here should have turned a lot of people against it. I mean, you think that everyone would just assume that it was made by Eggman fanboys to begin with. Like, the minute it called the Freedom Fighter HQ an opposing tower. It'd be nice if we saw tons of people disagreeing with the video, if only because of that alone. But I guess that wouldn't be very interesting to see people showing faith in Sonic like they always do. This was the only part of the issue where I started getting frustrated. For the most part, I'm fascinated by just how brilliant this video's evidence is. Like, it has a lot of Good points! Then the video talks about Supersonic as a secret to reveal about him. Because I guess we're supposed to believe that most people think that he's not Sonic at all. I guess when Supersonic showed up to threaten the world as a separate entity, people got confused. But still, I mean, there was clearly witnesses in Oil Ocean Zone to the fact that Sonic turned Supersonic. Tails even told them about how it was. Wouldn't news have spread? Doesn't this world have the internet? Well, maybe it didn't have the internet under Eggman, but once Eggman was gotten rid of, you'd think that news would have gotten out. Not to mention Sonic clearly turned Supersonic in that nasty bar. You'd think people would have talked about that too. I mean, you could definitely make the argument that Supersonic is Sonic's true self. His personality when he's completely lost control of himself with no inhibitions, no restraint, only caring about doing the thing he enjoys the most. Destroying things, like robots for example. I've been making that argument from day one, and that's what I love about the super form. It can't be a coincidence that Blateway Sonic, the most evil of the heroic Sonics, and the only one that was exposed to a machine containing all of the world's evil exploding, just so happens to be the only Sonic to have his supersonic form be evil. I guess Porker's delusional when he says Sonic's got his super form under control, because he doesn't. It happens whether he wants to or not the minute he gets really mad. Well, it's not really mad at all. Did the writer forget why it happens? He goes super because he's desperate. His life is in danger. Why would Porker say that it's because he got really mad? That just implicates Sonic. That just gets him into trouble because he can get really mad normally against villains. But like, it's going to be rare that he would be genuinely in a situation where he's about to die. He has super speed. He can run away from a lot of things. So that was forced. We see footage of Supersonic going after his friends, and then we see live footage of Sonic storming the studio, assaulting the guards, naturally annoyed because he put together from their interviews that they're trying to get him in trouble. So wait, is this a deluxe? So wait, is he complaining about the smear campaign video that's the original video? And what we're seeing here is the deluxe version of the video that includes this? He sees the two people that used to be escaped prisoners in the Dracon Empire, which is exactly why I was so hard on them in the issue where they first appeared. I knew by that point what they were going to do to Sonic. I can't believe I never questioned it until now, but these guys, why were these guys even in the Dracon Empire when they're clearly not Dracons? They're not fish people in mech suits, so were they kidnapped from Mobius? I mean, I questioned it in my review, but that was an off-script thing. Anyways, they say that they're the ones making the smear campaign against Sonic. Odd. I guess they joined the Eggman fanboy club. I was expecting it to be Grimer. Sonic admits that the Supersonic video isn't fake, and then he clearly looks depressed, saying that him making Eggman was the worst day of his life. And he clearly says that if he hadn't done that, a group of robots called the Brotherhood of Metalex would have done something evil. Sure, the transmission cuts out at the very end, but it should be obvious that he was gonna say something that would have excused what he did. He even clearly explained that the Metalex were evil robots he was trying to stop. Plus, the audience should really be suspicious because of how conveniently the transmission cut out right when Sonic was about to say something to contradict the video. The video isn't subtle at all about its agenda against Sonic. The evidence is there, but it's so obvious about trying to manipulate its audience that it's like an advertisement. And you know what everybody does when they see something like that? They change the channel or walk away from the TV. You'd be surprised how rebellious people are against the idea of people trying to manipulate them. That's why Adblock is so popular. Though the smear campaign is brilliantly crafted otherwise. People have strongly held opinions. There's no way that people would just treat it like an advertisement and immediately walk away from it if they saw it on TV. I mean, I assume it's aired on TV, because if it was released on DVD, nobody would pick it up. In the next story, we see Amy in Metropolis Zone, as I wonder what happened with Techno and Short Fuse. She wonders if she can pick up a cheap sandwich toaster in the market, and some suspicious-looking woman tells her with a smirk that she can get her the perfect perfume for her to make her irresistible with Sonic. Amy's pretty smart as she just says that she has to take a shower to wash away the sleaze. But then the woman proves herself to be smarter as she forces the perfume on her and makes all of the guys around Amy get infatuated with her, including a rabbit Mobian that I mistook for Johnny at first. This is why Johnny's design sucked. He looked so much like a generic rabbit Mobian that I made that mistake out of tiredness. She starts to run away from people chasing her because they're in love with her. You know, if somebody hated Amy for chasing Sonic all the time, I can imagine this would be like pretty cathartic karma for her, because now she knows how she made Sonic feel. Though it's much worse for her because there's a whole crowd of people after her, and there'd be some pretty dark implications if they got their hands on her. I did smile at the amusingly vain line from Amy that she's only moderately attractive. Amy attacks to defend herself, and she charmingly says that she enjoys hitting these tryhards who are desperately trying to hit on her with one-liners, which would be pretty annoying. Then she goes to the women's shop because she'd be completely safe there. Fortunately for her, it looks like not a single lesbian was in the store to chase after her in an ironic twist. She jumps through the window somehow unharmed to go confront the love bug, and she throws her into the sewers through a manhole. This makes both of them stink. The story ends with a panel that made me smile where the civilians are commenting on her odor, saying that she's too rough. And Amy says the relatable line, "But now I just need to make it home without dying of embarrassment. Some days it doesn't pay to get out of bed." Then, for the Sonic's World story, we once again don't get to see Techno and Shortfuse's adventure, but instead we see Amy and Tails in Casino Night Zone, which has been renamed the Zone of Sin by some people. Amy admits that this is Tails' area of expertise since he used to defend this place. I like that. At least she's acknowledging his usefulness. So she asks him if Max Gamble is back in business with hundreds of new insect workers, and Tails confirms it, saying that they're immigrants from the Special Zone. So did the Chaotix warn them to evacuate the place before it would be destroyed? I guess so. Because that's the only explanation I can think of for why they survived. Tails says it's suspicious that Amy got threatened by an insect Mobian who was somehow taller than her, when at the same time, Max Gamble hired insect people for his casino. How did Gamble get out of prison to go back to being in charge of the casino? I guess prison sentence lengths are pathetically small on Mobius. Ever since Eggman was dethroned. I wish they explained that, otherwise him constantly getting back in business would feel contrived just to make him be a villain again. Amy says that it's time for some detective work, as I get some fond memories of the issue where the Chaotix went into Renfield's casino in Archie, where it was making infiltrators of people's slot machines. Amy, with her crossbow, threatens someone to take her to Max Gamble, and then with her standing at Gamble's door, she asks Tails charmingly, "Okay, for the record, I'm still playing the bad cop, right?" And Tails replies, "Amy, sometimes I really worry about you." You should be saying that to Sonic. She barely ever says stuff like this. I'd say this makes her badass and spunky, the kind of Amy I liked from SA1. But she barely ever talks like this. Max Gamble insists that he's being legal this time, as the insects traveled here to escape a terrible depression, and not to evacuate their zone when it was destroyed? So, huh? He then says they were made homeless by the zone's destruction. Good, he at least acknowledges that. Immediately, someone working for Gamble escorts Amy and Tails out of his office and proves she's evil by calling them do-gooders. Tails wonders if they were wrong, which is obviously code speak in the Fleetway comic for "we were right," because this isn't the end of the story yet. Then we immediately see Max Gamble telling someone named Don Longlegs that the heroes could be a problem. Well, this is much more interesting than him being the villain by himself. The story ends with Amy and Tails being thrown out of the casino by a goon of the Dons, which was stupid of him to do because it immediately told them that they were wrong about giving Max Gamble a chance, but maybe he never even considered the idea that they'd think he was innocent. But he lied to them that he was innocent. This issue is by Ed Reynolds, and quite a lot happened here, leaving me frustrated at the end. The first story was the smear campaign against Sonic starting. I was surprised that this happened so early, because the first thing I ever heard about Fleetway Sonic Online is that Sonic's reputation was ruined, and that plot thread never got resolved. Hey, at least this makes the continuity completely unique and original, because no other continuity of Sonic, especially not an official one, would be caught dead doing this to their precious mascot. Its evidence is surprisingly convincing and brilliant, actually. It addresses a concern about privacy because the Kintobor computer, Kintobor by itself a concern, can spy on and get info about anywhere on the globe, and Sonic is portrayed as a control freak because he surrounds himself with passive friends who will put up with his rude behavior, and he does boss Tails around. I could totally see Porker as being weak-willed and easily manipulated. Then the best part of the campaign happens because we see Sonic insulting Tails, totally dismissing him offhand for no real reason. A lot more panels should have been dedicated to this. The problem is that this would have felt better, much better, if we saw him when he was saying lines that he actually said to Tails. He said some pretty terrible things. Just a few issues ago, he said that maybe Tails isn't a complete waste of space after all. That's a really backhanded compliment there. I'd rather they have used something not exclusive to the fan continuation if they're gonna go with this idea. We could have had a lot more panels showing us that, yeah, Sonic's been a bully to Tails, so he kind of has all of this coming. Tails has been constantly dismissed as just the worthless sidekick, like people asking for Sonic's autograph instead of his. We could have had plenty of panels, a whole montage, showing that maybe Tails deserves to be more popular than Sonic is in this comic. But instead, we just have a grand total of 2 panels of Sonic bullying Tails, and in a tame way at that. He just dismisses him and calls him an insult. And 2 panels of Tails delusionally insisting that Sonic doesn't mean any harm by it, and saying he's not scared of Sonic, when in the entirety of the comic, Sonic's never hugged him once. The disappointing thing is that after this, the video goes on to be the most obviously, pathetically manipulative of all, going to a conspiracy theory that Sonic and Eggman were buddies all along and getting Sonic exposed for creating Eggman in the first place, which is actually a good point. Then when Sonic admits that it's true, he clearly looks depressed, says that was the worst day of his life, and goes on to say that he did that to stop the Metalics. Even though he didn't get to finish the sentence, that should have really made a difference. What also should have made a difference was that the transmission oh so conveniently cut out at that moment. And worst of all, the conspiracy theorist professor says that maybe Eggman was the victim all along. You'd think that would be an absolutely unacceptable thing to utter in the Sonic universe and immediately get everyone clued in, who wasn't already, that this is Eggman propaganda. I have a feeling that we're not going to see people disagreeing with the smear campaign for the reasons that I've mentioned exactly. Which would have felt a little better, showing us that not 100% of everyone not only watched the clearly manipulating video all the way through when it was challenging their deep-set opinions, but not 100% of everyone agreed with it when they did watch it. I mean, this is so illogical. People skip advertisements for a reason, because they don't want to be manipulated. Very few people would have their deeply held opinions changed because that's how people are, they're stubborn. I'm torn because on the one hand it has really good evidence, but it's so obviously got an agenda that most people would see right through it and not give it a chance. And the people who would be convinced shouldn't be a big enough amount of people to make a difference. I guess it was for the best that they compiled a wide variety of evidence against Sonic, and making issues takes time with the art and stuff, but they should have had a lot more focus on Sonic mistreating his friends. Because that make it feel more cathartic, like karma coming back to bite him in the end. Which is probably the meta reason for why this is all happening to Sonic. That's why I want to like the smear campaign so much. Not only is this plot point going to be extremely refreshing and unique to the Sonic franchise, making this comic start to focus on somebody else as the main character instead of the comic's resident anti-Sue, but it's also karma. He's a hero, and it'd be much better for Mobius if a competent, super speedy hedgehog stayed a hero, of course. But I can understand why the writer wanted to make this concept happen, because he had it coming for a long time for the way he bullied Tails, and the terrible things he said to his friends, like saying he should have left Amy on Miracle Planet. Not to mention, it's not just his friends, like, remember when he held a kid upside down? I didn't grow up with this comic, I just read it recently in my early 20s, so I can't even begin to imagine how much resentment a longtime fan would grow to have for the version of Sonic they've seen in this comic, who hasn't even once given a friend of his a hug or called Tails his brother. Also, I haven't found a single moment of him being a Gary Stu in the continuation, like knowing things that he shouldn't, as in. So he's definitely not a creator's pet anymore, and by this point it shows. But you'd think part of the smear campaign would be showing off Sonic's strange sense of humor. I thought it would show off Sonic pretending he was about to die to prank Tails, which I learned upon reading the actual issue, that he only did it to make Eggman think he was doomed so he could escape and go follow him. So it wasn't as bad as I heard, but he could have revealed that he was alive after Eggman had left. I was expecting something like that prank to happen much worse later. Like, I thought that the prank would be that Sonic would fall out of a plane and that he would pretend that killed him, but it didn't. Is it something like that? Like, showing Sonic pranking Tails like that would have been perfect if they wanted something for the campaign. But no, just Sonic dismissing Tails generically in brand new dialogue. I'm just frustrated with this, but not furious like with some of Flint's worst issues. I'm not going on a furious rant about how forced and stilted and unnatural its writing is. But seeing as I really enjoyed Fleetway Sonic's fascinatingly jerkish behavior, I'm really gonna miss him. I guess it's because he's so snarky, like his lines are so sarcastic. Like, I feel like he's got the best snarky lines out of all the Sonics, like ignoring how, like, sure he mistreats his friends, but I don't know, I'm really gonna miss him. This story is so monumental that it completely overshadows the lighthearted backup stories that have nothing to do with anything. The second one has Amy get hit with a perfume that makes every guy around her go wild over and chase her, and the third one has Tails and Amy being threatened by Max Gamble's goon after it's revealed that he's working for a spider boss. I would have preferred to immediately see a follow-up to the story where Techno and Sharpies were thrown to the Ring of Eternity, but these were alright though. Amy had some especially charming, relatable lines in the second one.